Hello, and welcome back to Many Adventures Mini. This is hopefully going to mark me getting back onto some sort of reasonable schedule going forward for getting videos out. But for those of you that don't know, please go ahead and check the link down below. There's only a couple of hours left on my Hero Forge giveaway that I started up a couple weeks ago. If you move quickly, you may still be able to enter into that if that's something you're interested in. Put a link below. But other than that, we'll go forward. For this video, I'm doing another Artisans Guild one. This one took a really long time to print. It's a really large, giant demon. It's called the Demon King from Artisans Guild. It took the better part of a week to get printed out. Several long hours of printing, and it's a massive figure. Way bigger than anything else. I'll have a picture up for scale later in the video as well, but crazy big. So that's what it took me a long time to get it printed. Then with all the craziness going on, I had to keep delaying getting it painted, debated shelving it, and getting some other stuff painted to get videos out, but I really wanted to get it done. Finally finished it. So let's go ahead and jump in and I'll show you how I did this one. So let's go. Alright, so here we have the pre-image for a size comparison showing you what a normal miniature looks like compared to this guy. So he really is just a massive figure. It took a really long time to print this one, partially because he's so big. He had to be printed out in 11 different pieces and then assembled, which is why it took so long, and definitely one of the biggest miniatures I've ever tried to paint. Not the biggest, but like about the same as some of the largest ones I've ever worked on. So starting with the painting here, I'm starting off with this Vallejo German Panzer Gray. It's a nice dark gray, which I've started to enjoy using as the base whenever I'm trying to do like a zenithal priming technique. If I'm not going to be using zenithal, I still prefer to use a brighter one, like with my normal like bright gray that I use. But when I'm doing zenithal like I am here, using the medium gray and then the white to get the zenithal effect, I do like starting off with this Panzer Gray, as it's a nice shadow base to work off of. You may have noticed he kind of fell off of his base there that I had him stuck to before. After a little bit I just kind of give up on that because he's too big and heavy and he doesn't stick to it, and I just grab him by the base, which I don't prefer because it's not all that great. There you saw a quick image of what he looked like after doing the zenithal, but before doing anything else. And then I take this red ink and just glaze this over everything, doing my best to preserve my light to dark ratios that I established before, but trying to basically just turn everything this nice blood red color. Because that's what I'm going for with my demons, so that's just kind of what he gets. It almost looks a little bit too strong here, but it does get toned down a little bit. I use a coating of varnish here just to help seal in all the inks as best as I can, though I do come back here with a little bit of yellow ink, which I use to add a little bit of variation, like here in the wings. The yellow on top of the red, just glazing it in, turns it this nice orange color. That's a bit of a additional part, and I kind of spray a little bit on the top as well, just to turn some of the higher points a little more orangey rather than red. This really helps things kind of pop just a little bit. Then I come in here with some black contrast paint. I wanted to see what this would look like over the red. I figured it would give me a little bit of a red highlight on these black sections, which it sort of did, but didn't really give me the effect I was going for, and I probably should have just done a normal basic black paint layer, and that would have done everything I needed it to. I did lose a little bit of footage here where I was just painting a bunch of these carapacey looking sections black, so I apologize for that. The footage just got lost when I was working on it, which is another thing that delayed me getting all of this out. So I had got as far as you can see there with the black, and then decided I needed to take a break and work on something else, so I pulled out my dark gun metal and started using that on his armor pieces and weapons just to get that all fleshed out. And this is true for any miniature, but especially on these large ones. If you've got some long and tedious section that you need to work on, like I was doing with the black scaly carapace bits, and it's taking forever and you're having trouble, like take a step back, go work on something else on the miniature, or maybe even go work on a different miniature if that's what you need to do. I didn't end up needing to do that. I was okay just switching off to working on this metal instead of the black, and going back to the black later was a good distraction and made me still feel like I was making progress. So that's what worked out for me. But just getting all this metal on here, it does make the weapons seem a little bit boring, but I wasn't trying to do anything too fancy with the weapons. I do tend to try and hold myself to what I call a tabletop standard. I might display my miniatures. First and foremost, I paint my miniatures with the intent that they're going to be played with on a table. So I do try to make them as nice as I can, but I'm not going to spend 70 hours plus painting a single miniature. It's just not the way I like to paint. Maybe one day I'll give it a shot just to try and improve my own painting skills, but that's not really me. The most I ever spend is like on these larger ones. It takes me about 4 hours, maybe 5, no more than 6 on the high end, to try and get all of this put in as best as I can. But I'm starting to get some of the fiddly bits here, like he's got this chain belt holding up his loincloth. Just trying to get that in. I do end up having to do a little bit of cleanup, and it's just extra messy with this guy because of all the red that I'm trying to be very careful not to mess up, and just getting everything in there. I then use some leather brown here, and this is what I use for coloring in his loincloth. For his size, I figured that just a big slab of leather covering him made the most sense to me, and I didn't want to fiddle with any like strong colors that I have to match together, so that's why I went with that. And it also matches nicely with all of these straps and buckles that go around on his armor bits to hold everything in place, so it just made sense to me to go along with something like that. His color scheme is very basic. It's basically just black and red with some slight tone variation and then the metallics, but I think that is perfectly fine for something like this. He is mostly impressive because of his sculpt and his size. The paint job is just there to accentuate that and make him pop out and stand out even more. So I'm trying to do my best to accentuate that as best as I can. And I don't need any distracting colors that don't need to be there. So then I come in here with some skeleton bone, which I'm using on the handle of this big two-headed axe. It looked kind of like a bone material to me on the sculpt, and after painting this, it just looks like the head of this axe is mounted onto like the spine of some giant creature, and I liked the aesthetics, so I stuck with that. Just did that through the entire handle, and I think it works really well. I like the imagery of this demon like slew a giant or something and ripped its spine out to use as a component for its axe. It's got a lot of good imagery there for however you end up wanting to use this demon. I have a few good plans for this demon myself. Also putting it in here on the teeth. The teeth are one of the few areas I decided not to go with black on this guy like the others. I did it on pretty much everywhere else, including like his fingernails and whatnot are black, but the teeth made more sense to go with the bone color for me. I guess I'm just a little odd like that. Then I take another break from working on all that and get the base colored in, starting with my basic dark stone. We're just going to do a basic stone base, nothing too fancy, but it will look nice for him to be seen standing on. So just get all of that colored in as best as possible, nice clean coating. And then we're finally back to the black, going back and touching up some of the areas I worked on before, and then adding in more. I'm still working with the Black Templar stuff here, but as I said before, this is probably something I should have just not used, just used a cheaper black paint, because this is kind of a waste of contrast paint. I should have just used normal black paint and worked with it from there, but I was trying to see what I would get going with this, and not the best application, this over red. The Black Templar seems to end up being a little too dark for a lot of applications, so there's definitely that going on, but it is still a really cool paint. It just doesn't shine best under this particular application of uses. And I need to go around and do a lot of reapplication with this, occasionally close the bottle and shake it up because it kind of settles and congeals, and I probably dried out more of this paint than I needed to working on this. Just kind of a pain all over the place with how long I had to spend working. And I really don't like working out of like these Games Workshop pots. I really prefer being able to transfer to my wet palette, but I never really feel like that works all that well when I'm working with the contrast paints. I feel like it gets a little like diluted with the water. I have issues with the effects, and you have to use so much of it, it just makes more sense to use the pot. But when you have to work for long periods of time like this, I do feel the waste, and I don't like it. You can see here, though, I'm also working on these little bone-like sections on the wings. This was one of the things I did want to like do black, because I figured it would be a nice, cool contrast with the reddish-orange wings and whatnot. And the final result, I think, came out looking a little bit good, even though I need to do a little bit more work afterwards to get where I'm going. But this is just a nice, tedious little process, especially because I have to hold him and be careful, make sure I'm not smudging any paint with my fingers while I'm holding him, which is why it's such a pain that he's too heavy to like stick on a stand. I need to find a better solution for how to hold big and heavy miniatures that I'm working on. There's plenty of easy and simple solutions for small, little light miniatures, but big ones like this that end up being pretty heavy, in comparison anyway, there's not really any easy solutions for it that I have figured out. So if anybody knows anything, please like comment and let me know if you know of like a better way to secure these on any sort of grip for painting, because I would love to look into that. That's a subject for a whole other video all by itself, so that's something I'll have to think about, see if I can find a solution for that, or somebody can help me with that, and I'll see if I can share that sometime in the future. But going on, we're just about done with the wings here, and then we've got to work on a few other areas, just fleshing out some of this stuff here with like this leather wrapped handle. Again, I just went with leather because I'm trying to keep everything simple, and the brown leather tends to go decently well with the red skin as well. And you can also see here a little bit now that with all the black in there, it really has toned down the overall effect with the bright red skin, so that doesn't seem quite so bright and garish as it was before. It's still bright and garish, but it doesn't seem as like overpowering as it was before. And I'm adding in even more black, working my way down this carapace on this guy's back, and working my way down the tail now. This is another area where I'm trying really hard to be careful. I only want to get like this little top section right now. Don't want to spill it over because this contrast paint, it can be so hard to work with if you get a little bit of a mistake. I've got a little bit of hair in there. Sorry about that. But as I was saying, you make a little bit of a mistake with where you put the brush, it can be really hard to get that pigment off if you're not really quick with the cleanup. I've done it before, and it's a real pain to get fixed. It's just not something that's fun to work with. And then it takes a while to dry, so when you're having to hold the miniature by the base or the miniature like I'm doing here, you can accidentally smear it or get it on your fingers and then touch somewhere else and put it where you don't want it. It's overall just a mess. But I get most of it on there, and then I move on finally to the washing step. Put my homemade black wash on all these metallic bits, starting with the chain and then working on the arm guards here, getting everything thoroughly coated, but trying to make sure it doesn't like overpool and go anywhere I don't want it. But trying to just get everything in there so that we highlight our crevices and whatnot. Get it here on the axe. This is one of the areas where I actually went a little overboard with it. I had to clean it up a little bit. As you can see here, some of the black reached down to the handle, not what I wanted. But after I clean that up a little bit, I take my burnt umber wash and cover the handle, which really gives that nice aged bone look that you're typically looking for. Do the same thing to his teeth, and you've got that nice grimacing smile he's got going on. I also apply it to all the leather sections just to make them pop a little bit more as as well. Not really doing anything in addition to that, just a base coat and wash is all I'm working on with them, because I'm trying to let the skin tone shine through as like the star of the piece here. Here I'm using these two red colors to do these like fleshy protuberances growing out of his axe. I had been debating like what color I wanted these to be, because I could have gone any direction with it really, but I did decide to stick with my red color scheme, make it look like there's bloody veins just built into this axe, so that it's almost, the axe itself almost looks like a living thing, with the spine handle, and then you've got the bloody veins going out into the metallic axe head. Makes it seem like a living thing, like a powerful magical artifact wrought from the flesh of a living creature, which has some nice imagery to it, so I stuck with it. Used the dark red to base coat and did a basic little highlight with the brighter red, the pure red color. Gives a nice pulsing veiny color to it. Then I'm starting to do some dry brushing on the base, starting with this uniform gray, giving that a thorough dry brush to get this stone color really going. Get everything in there nice and thoroughly, and also then working more with some skeleton bone, which I showed earlier. And then I'm also skeleton bone dry brushing on all of these black bits to kind of bring out some of the highlights there and bring these carapace more in line with a bony color as well. That's kind of the secondary effect I was going for. I really do like how this looked, and it's also the reason why I say it was kind of a waste that I used the contrast paint, because all of the benefits of using contrast paint were basically wasted because I dry brushed the high points with the skeleton bone. So I should have just gone with a normal black and dry brushed that, and I would have gotten basically the same effect with a decent amount less hassle and work, and just crap to deal with using the contrast paint. So that is a lesson learned, and I will try to employ that more in the future, but I still ended up with a cool look that I liked, so it's not too much of a fail in that regard. So then we're coming on and I'm working with the eyes, same as I did with the demon gruntlings a while ago. I'm using this really bright jungle green for the eyes, and then just giving a nice black slit pupil in there. I do end up having to like redo it because it ends up looking too much like a frog the first time that I do it. And I go back in and fix it up. Here I'm taking just a little bit of this warlock purple, which is kind of just a dark pink, just to bring out a little bit of a highlight on the tongue to make it stand out from the rest of his skin tone. And that's basically it. At this point I give everything a nice thorough coating in my matte varnish, trying to protect that paint job I spent such a long time working on. And here you can now see the final images. I'm really happy with how this one turned out, and it did take me a long time to get to this point just because of all the craziness that's been going on with viruses and quarantines and earthquakes in my area, but I think it finally turned out good. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. This was a long and arduous process for me to get this one finished, but I am happy that I did finally finish it. Again, if you're within the first couple hours of this going out, you may still be able to qualify for the entry for my Hero Forge giveaway, link down in the description. That's going to be ending at noon today, Mountain Standard Time. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help out a lot. If you want to catch more of my videos in the future, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever the next video goes up. If you want to help support me directly, I would appreciate you checking out my links to my Patreon page down below, as well as my Etsy store, where I will occasionally put up items that I've painted for sale. If you have any feedback, please leave any comments down below, and I hope to see everybody back here again next time.